welcome to Pegwarmers. I'm Kevin,
I'm Jordan.
and we're here to talk about toys. We've got Jordan here from geekanything.com.
Hello.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about the website?
Yeah, we're geekanything.com. We cover anything and everything geeky. So we're a news media site. We talk about movies and comics and toys, and literally, if you can think anything geeky about something, we're probably talking about it.
Excellent.
Yeah.
All right, so in our news segment, Mattel has recently gone through several chief executives, and the new guy who's kind of finally stuck and has been there for a little bit has decided that he wants the old brands to make money again by making movies. And I think, where could he get this idea? Like, has any other toy company ever made movies about their toys?
I mean, distinctly made by themselves?
Well, not by themselves.
I'm
sure they're going to get...
Like, there's plenty of stuff that's been licensed. I mean, everyone's seen at least 2 of the Transformers movies.
Right, so that's kind of my point, is that, so Hasbro made a deal with Paramount forever ago, and they've made a bunch of bad movies and a bunch of successful movies.
They've made a number of middling movies.
Yes. But, so if Mattel wants to do Barbie and Magic 8-Ball and Uno,
Sure.
I mean, that goes along with Battleship and Transformers and G.I. Joe.
I would definitely be interested to see what Mattel would do with it. Like, obviously, there's, like, the big ones, like Masters of the Universe that they have.
Right.
But then, like, you said Magic 8-Ball as a movie. I don't know how much that
is one of the ones
works.
listed in the article.
I know they've been working on Barbie for, like, years. And I think they had Amy Schumer attached for a while, but then people got really upset because Amy Schumer is Amy Schumer. And then now they've got Margot Robbie, and people are kind of excited because, yeah, she's Barbie. I could see that.
Yeah.
If you told me she was starring as Barbie, as Barbie, sold. I could definitely see them pulling that off. Who's playing Ken? We don't know yet. But I feel like it could go any direction at this point because it really depends on if they get the tone right for a movie about a toy line. But who do you market that to?
Right.
Because is it for kids? Is it for the adults who grew up with these toys? Or is it something that's sort of in between and it's not going to find its audience till 20 years later, like Josie and the Pussycats' best movie ever?
Yeah, I feel like at least they can look at what Hasbro did and try to glean some things from that.
I
but
don't know
I don't
if
even
Hasbro's
know
the company to take notes from after the last dozen Transformers movies.
I'm feeling like maybe that's what they got to look at is like, how did they mess this up? Look at Snake Eyes. Oh my goodness.
I refuse to look at Snake Eyes as of right now. I haven't looked at it yet, and I may be just avoiding it.
Yeah, stick with just avoiding it. And it's weird too because Paramount had just recently said that they're not going to be doing more big budget movies, so I'm not sure if Hasbro's going to pivot or stop making movies related to...
I didn't know Paramount was pivoting, so that's...
Yeah, there was an article just the other day that said that they're not, they don't want to do blockbuster style movies
I mean,
anymore.
if I had just made Snake Eyes, I'd probably be thinking that too.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to think what other brands Mattel even really has right now, because, like, what do they have? They have Mega Bloks, which is now Mega Constructs.
Right, which
is just a bunch of licensed brands instead of anything original.
All right, for the next segment, we've got new to the collection. And what did you bring to show us?
So they're new to me. They're old toys. They're probably from about 10 years ago, around 2009 to 2011. I can't remember the exact release window on them. But these are from a super, super limited release window Jurassic Park toy line that, like, nobody has. And I found them recently loose at a toy shop. These were part of what was meant to be a Jurassic Park meets G.I. Joe crossover line. I don't think they had any G.I. Joe branding on it, but the human figures that came packaged with these were G.I. Joe figures. Like, distinctly, they're just G.I. Joes repainted and redone in Jurassic Park deco.
Right.
But they weren't, like, characters. They were just generic Marines and whatnot. So I've got the Pachyrhinosaurus and the Allosaurus. These are... honestly, really hard to come by and pretty rare. Like, in box, these would probably fetch $100 a piece.
Wow.
I got really lucky at a local shop and found them for $30 on the pair because the guy seemed to like me. I wish I could remember the name of the local shop. I'd give him a shout out. But it's a really great place if I can remember the name of it ever. And honestly, the articulation on these is like such a huge high point for the Jurassic Park toys of the older lines. because it scales really well with the stuff from JP3 onward because they were a little bit smaller than the original stuff from Kenner. But Hasbro had that line for so long because they bought Kenner back in the day who made the original stuff. And then JP3 came out and everything was kind of awful for a bit. And then for some reason they made these beautiful pieces. There was a Stegosaurus planned as well, but it never saw release. These were Toys R Us exclusive, and I think they hit in Canada, and a very few minimal ones hit the States. But they were just like really short on the shelves for like less than 3 months probably before they were gone. And they're just really unique pieces that are really well articulated. They have the classic dino damage. You can see I don't have the piece in him. This one has the piece in, but you would never know it because it blends so well. And they're fully articulated. They've got ankle joints. They have ball joints here. He's got an action feature. The jaw hinges in 2 different ways. He's got a ball joint head. It's just stuff you don't see in the classic Jurassic Park stuff.
I'm really impressed with the paint work too. Like,
they have
a lot of deco hits.
Is beautiful. And that's one of the other things where I was like, you see these and you see how close they were to getting it right. And for some reason, they pulled the plug on the whole line. There was vehicles planned. There was a bunch of other figures and dinos planned. The only other ones we really saw was the Stego because he was on the back of the packaging for these two. And unfortunately, I didn't get the Joe figures with them. But like for $30 for the pair, I wasn't going to complain because I've been after these for a decade now.
Probably whoever had them didn't keep them together. Like the army men got separated. He
distinctly told me because these were from the shop owner's personal collection. He bought them for the Joes.
Oh, all right.
Because he wanted those particular Joes in his collection. I think he bought multiples of these when he found them. And then he didn't need extra dinos, so he hooked me up with. And again, that's $30 was a steal for these two, and they are easily one of my most prized pieces of my collection now because I have like a giant Jurassic Park setup at home. I've got the original command compound set up.
That's an awesome place.
So I've got that thing. I've got like all the old electric fence, the original stuff with a lot of the more modern Mattel pieces, like the giant Brachiosaurus was the one they had. The Apatosaurus is the new one that just hit shelves. But it's a really well scaled for the newer figures and the older figures, so it works perfectly as a display.
I love the new Jurassic Park sets they're doing in the boxes with the like a cinema scene from the old Star Wars stuff. They're amazing.
They're great. I'm a huge fan, especially what Target's been doing with like the Legacy collection. Like they just did the Ford Explorer, with the T-Rex and Tim for the first time in 20 years almost. And then fingers crossed, they might actually make Lex sometime soon. We might get our very first ever Lex figure in history. I mean, if Mattel keeps going with the line the way they've been doing, I mean, there's a chance we might get our first Lex. We just got our first John Hammond recently. We got our first Ray Arnold recently. So who knows? Maybe we might even get Gennaro. And they could even keep it going and maybe give us the cast of the Lost World, all things considered.
It's neat that they're finally making toys from these lines that are so old and like now that the sculpting and the technology is there to make them look so good.
Yeah. I mean, hell, they made us not one, but 2 different versions of Wayne Knight. So the fact that we've got 2 Newman figures in my house and one of them talks.
Right.
It's like unheard. Like I would have never imagined 15 years ago that I'd ever own not one, but 2 different versions and 2 different scales actually of Dennis Nedry as a figure that looks like Wayne Knight and not like a generic armless guy with big sunglasses on who looked like he got his eyes dilated.
Thanks for bringing those on. Those are really cool. These
awesome. Are some of my favorites.
I remember like the rumors going around when they were coming out. People mentioning on different forums and stuff about the G.I. Joe parts, but I just never saw them.
Oh, yeah, the Joe figures themselves were just like really, really cool looking, too. It's unfortunate that I wasn't able to get those as well, but I'll take what I could get with these things as a Jurassic fan.
So for our next segment, which is the Pegwarmers, I decided to bring up Avatar. And it was a toy line that was... I didn't even like pay attention to it when it came out.
Nobody did.
And then I saw it at Ollie's and picked up some stuff. And I had not seen the movie, so I wasn't buying any of them because I enjoyed the movie or anything like that, which I did enjoy later once I saw it.
Yeah.
I picked it up because they were really generic looking like civilian type people.
Absolutely.
And I used to do a lot of stop motion animation and would need background characters.
Sure.
But in reality, they're the most pointless, like... Here's a guy in a t-shirt, and here's a guy with golf clubs. I mean,
I kind of love that they made the guy with golf clubs for some inexplicable reason. And, like, looking at him up close, I never realized how much he looks nothing like Giovanni Ribisi, which, like, would have been the saving grace of that is to get a Giovanni Ribisi figure.
Right.
But like, it doesn't even look like him at this point. It just looks like Josh Brolin, which is the most generic white guy I can think of.
We've got a guy in t-shirt and jeans who comes with a wheelchair accessory.
Which, now, that's cool for inclusion.
He's a main character, so it's important. Yeah. But like, as far as action figures go, if you want to sell this to kids, if he doesn't come with like the table, the
pod,
there's not a lot of action in that action figure.
Yeah.
And then I don't even remember who this guy is.
I don't
but
remember his
we have
name.
a guy in a fishing vest. Super exciting.
It's God, he's in so much other fun stuff too. Like, it's weird because like he's sort of faded already,
right?
But, like, he's like the lead, I think, in Hatchet, which is always a fun one.
Oh, okay.
And he was in Grandma's Boy and a bunch of other random stuff, but like, and Shark Night, which is like a guilty pleasure movie. But that guy, I couldn't tell you that guy's name or the name of anybody else other than maybe the main guy. He's Jake Sully, and and evil Giovanni Ribisi, as I call him.
The whole line isn't all boring because, like, I have the Scorpion gunship here.
Yeah.
And this is a really cool looking toy. Like,
that looks beautiful.
This should have sold.
Yeah.
The Na'vi people, those are kind of interesting too, I guess, if you've seen the movie. Like,
they're at least neat looking.
Yeah. So for me at the store, like, when I was at Ollie's and these things were dirt cheap, I was like, this would look cool with my G.I. Joes. In fact, I used to have this on the G.I. Joe aircraft carrier with a Sam Jackson... Nick Fury, standing next to it, like
that makes sense.
Like that was his transport. And these guys, like I said, were just kind of generic people to have for other action figure things. But I just kind of passed on the aliens and there were a few monster type toys for the creatures, just because I hadn't seen the movie.
Sure.
And I don't feel like that's a movie you would take little kids to see.
It shouldn't have been, but it sort of was.
Yeah.
It was like, everyone makes the obvious comparison and saying, oh, it's Ferngully for adults. But it's the toy line was weird in that, like, they made a bunch of really cool looking aliens that you saw for 2 seconds on the screen. Like, they made these monster things for you to play with that you didn't really recognize from the movie because they weren't really in it or part of it. They were just sort of passing by in the background. You might have seen them, except for those dragon things.
Yeah.
And maybe the horses.
That can be cool for kids because, a lot of times as a kid, you're reacting like some scenes from the movie, but also kind of like expanding it. So having some supporting characters or other creatures is fun, but it was just such a weird toy line to put out there. It's bizarre to me.
I mean, there's a reason they didn't sell in it.
There is a reason they didn't sell.
I mean, that said, we're coming from the generation that grew up. Like, I know I personally grew up on toy lines for children for things like Terminator and Aliens and Predator and stuff that, like, why would a kid know what this is? But sure enough, there were tons and tons of toys for them that many of us still have floating around. If you're watching this show, I know that you definitely have at least one of those things I just said in your house.
Yeah, so I mean, like, I grew up on like the kind of RoboCop toys.
Absolutely.
And I had not seen the movie. I actually had a kid who, like, explained the plot of the movie to me poorly, and I was very confused by what he was telling me. And when I finally got to see it later, I was like, oh,
yeah,
holy cow.
I didn't see RoboCop till I was at least, like, bordering high school.
Okay.
So, like, I definitely had a bunch of the toys, though, when I was a kid, and, like, one of my friends gave me them because he had just sort of been done with them. But I'm like, I don't understand what RoboCop is. Like, oh, he's a cop who's half a robot. And I was like, sold.
Yeah,
I don't need any further explanation.
Yeah, I don't need to know
Like,
anything
if you
else.
just told me he's a cop who is also a robot, like, that's his job. He is a cop and he is a robot. Man has 2 jobs. He is working. And my big thing is that, like, I thought Avatar was like a Nickelodeon cartoon, so I was like, half expecting some sort of cool magical stuff, and all we got was Giovanni Ribisi with golf clubs and a bunch of weird blue people and Sigourney Weaver in a tank top. And it was just like, it was not the movie I think many people expected it to be.
It's amazing, though, that it's got this whole marketing thing behind it because they're going to crank out a whole bunch more.
Yeah.
And Disney's going to turn it into like a whole world.
And Disney has a whole theme park based on it. A whole section of their animal kingdom is now just the land of Avatar, Pandora.
The whole thing is just so bizarre, but yet it didn't work as kids' toys.
Well, it didn't. It's weird because, like, that was like the biggest movie of all time. And they actually, I think they re-released it in theaters like right before the pandemic.
Right.
In order to steal the title back, which I think they did. If I remember correctly, they stole the title back of like the most financially successful movie of all time because they re-released it in like 4K or something in IMAX just for the sake of it, for fun, to steal it back from Endgame, which is, fair. I get it. James Cameron's got to have his little cap. But it's one of those things where the movie came out, and I could not name more than one character from that movie.
No,
I could not quote a single line from that movie. I couldn't remember the name of almost any other thing in that movie. I know it's called Pandora. I know there's cool dragon things. I know that they do weird stuff with their tails that we're not going to talk about on camera. And they also use them for their horses, so it's weird.
I don't think I could tell you the plot of it other than army people want unobtainium.
Yeah.
And somehow they can project a guy into an alien.
Yeah, which I think that will be enough.
I guess.
Like we can put you in a new body, but we're gonna make it weird and blue instead of just making you a new body that will be useful to you and distinctly. Like, just a pitch here. I mean, the movie sells itself right there halfway through with the pitch of saying like, "Hey, we understand your legs don't work. We've made a brand new body that looks just like you and has all your physics and everything, but you can walk again. We're just gonna transfer your conscious." That's a movie.
Yeah.
I mean, that's it. That sells itself. And then James Cameron himself and was like, no. It's got to be bigger. We got to be blue, and we got to go to space, and there's got to be something stupid to go after.
You need a MacGuffin.
You need a MacGuffin. Which, honestly, I'm a little sad that they didn't call it, like, MacGuffinum or something like that. Like, that would have been it.
That was their second choice.
That was Avatar 2 coming next year.
So on the note of some of these like pointless toys, like the guy in the golf clubs or the guy in a fishing vest, that's sort of our main topic for today. It's just like toys that you go, why did this need to be made?
Yes. Which is, again, one of my favorite things. I have a really bad habit. My wife always looks at me and says, "Why did you bring this home?" Because I buy stuff if it's particularly weird and unique. And if it's something that makes no sense, there's no point to it. It's just like strange. It's gotta be in my collection and on my shelf. So I've got like a wide array of random stuff that I brought today to talk about. And I know you've got some other cool stuff too.
So I brought a few things. Some of the stuff that I thought about are things I don't even own, but I figured we could just kind of go back and forth and talk about different things.
Absolutely.
The first thing I can think of that was super pointless, and I see it pop up on lists too online, is the Rocky line that came with a side of beef action figure.
The meat.
The meat. It's
literally just called the meat in parentheses.
It's an accessory, and all right, if you really want to act out the scenes, that's great. But like a art museum step playset would be probably more fun and iconic. Yes,
they did the statue.
They did do the statue.
What gets me about the meat isn't the fact that they made the meat, because one, that's like one of those things where you kind of have to have it if you like Rocky.
Yeah.
But like they gave you the meat, but they didn't give you anything to hang the meat on. So there's not like a meat hook or like a display stand for it. You just get it, and like you can't even properly display Rocky beating up the meat. It's just sort of like he's got to Fred Flintstone it and like carry it and then put it on the side of the car or something. But you can't hang unless you just want to like come up with something on your own. There's no real way to display the meat out of the package, so it's like immediately more pointless without a display stand or something.
Yeah, I assume they just figured people were keeping these in the package.
I mean,
but I like to take my stuff out and display it.
Absolutely. And it's the meat. Like, what's not to like?
What?
It's like a weird, unique piece, but like, action movies are like particularly known for their weird, unique pieces like that. Like, and throwaway gags. Collectors love stuff like that.
But to make it without a figure, is really odd.
Like, it would be one thing if it was a deluxe playset, Rocky with the meat. It's a little known fact. I am a Philly native, born and raised. I've never seen a single Rocky movie.
Wow.
And I get a lot of trash for that from a lot of people. You guys should see the face I'm getting right now. From behind the camera, but I've just never seen a Rocky movie. They've never interested me. I don't do sports movies very much. Although I do have a weird level of love and appreciation for Apollo Creed. I think it's the hat.
Okay,
that's what does it for me. That and like I just love Carl Weathers. He's like such a good guy.
All right, so give us something that you brought along.
So one of my all-time favorite pieces in my collection is called Skull Attack Jack, which is from the Last Action Hero toy line, and it is effectively Arnold Schwarzenegger as Jack Slater as Hamlet. If you saw The Last Action Hero, which I'm hoping most of you have, it's a very underrated movie that people don't give enough credit to. It was ahead of its time in being meta, and people didn't get it at the time, so it flopped. But to me, this is like one of the ultimate action figures because it's Arnold Schwarzenegger as Hamlet, why is this in a toy line? Like, in the movie, it was a throwaway gag. They made a fake trailer for a fake movie that was an in-universe thing. The trailer was like maybe a minute and a half long. There was a bunch of puns involved, as you'd expect from a Schwarzenegger meta movie. But to me, the fact that they made an action figure of Arnold Schwarzenegger as Hamlet, that on top of that, I'm not going to launch it because I don't feel like losing it here in the studio somewhere, but he actually shoots a skull out of his hand, so he just launches it at you. But the fact that they actually made a toy of it just blows my mind every time I look at this thing. And mine was complete, but I think I broke his belt at some point, so it's just mostly complete with his little sword and his skull missile, which you never find the skull with him if you buy him loose. It's like impossible.
When I was in late elementary school, I don't know if it was 5th or 6th grade, you know how like they used to have you cover your book with the paper covers? So we had, in the library, they had these like advertisement type book covers, and they were for Last Action Hero. So the front of your book was the movie poster, and the back was all the action figures, like in a scene.
Yeah.
They were amazing.
And there's nothing not to like about The Last Action Hero. And the toy line is the gift that keeps on giving. Stepping back a little bit, I can't believe I didn't bring this up while we were talking about Rocky before. And this one's kind of a cheat because it's from a more recent toy line. But I really love that Super 7 in the last year or two has made the robot from Rocky 4, which again, I've never seen a Rocky movie, but I love that this is a toy that exists. And I actually bought it on my birthday when it released. Birthday Polly. Yeah, so it's... And I think my favorite part about it is I know from interviews that Sylvester Stallone hates the robot, and he wants to re-release Rocky 4 with the robot edited out. And it makes me love the robot more knowing how much he hates it. But I love that he's there, he's got his party hat, he's got the birthday cake, and the fact that they made this as an action figure just speaks volumes to me about why Super 7 is in business and doing well.
So Brian Flynn said they actually had to go and get a license for the robot because its likeness isn't covered by the Rocky franchise license.
Yep.
So they put extra effort into trying to get that figure made.
And that's why,
awesome.
and that is again why Brian Flynn and Super 7 are just like one of my favorite companies with stuff like that. And just the whole line is great.
So the next kind of pointless toy that I didn't bring it with me. I don't actually own it, but in the late 80s, early 90s, as we transitioned from Batman to DC superheroes, the gold back cards.
Yeah.
There was this Lex Luthor figure who was in his like purple suit jacket, and he had an action feature where he just kind of punched himself in the head.
Yeah.
And it was pretty pointless, especially considering a lot of those toys stole molds from an old line or copied old toys.
Yeah.
And you could have had him in his power suit.
Yeah.
And just had him have the whatever
the
action
weird little
that
robot
was.
arms move.
Right,
yeah.
right. I don't get it. I mean, somebody must have just kind of like wanted a different look for him.
Yeah.
But what a not very action-oriented figure.
Yeah, let's put him in a smoking jacket with like a big poofy collar and make him punch himself in the head. I mean, if I had to make I'm not a Lex Luthor fan for the most part, but that's like, I like comic Lex Luthor.
Yeah.
But movie Lex Luthor has just never done it for me. Like I know it's like sacrilege to say I don't like the Reeves films, but like Gene Hackman was awful as Lex Luthor to me. I appreciate what Reeves did for those movies, but like Hackman was not in any way, shape, or form a good thing in those movies.
He was just being a Batman villain. I feel like from
it was
the '66 show,
way too hammy, and that's not to his credit. He didn't write the script,
right.
So there's only so much to be done there. But it's the fact that I think that was more aimed at dressing him like the movie version, because that was the version kids of that era were used to seeing. So like I kind of get what they were going for with that figure, but it's not.
It's just not very action packed.
Yeah, and like if you're gonna make that version of Luthor, give him the hair. It's like
it's a lot like the politicians from Star Wars as action figures. Like, ooh, we can pass a bill. This is so action packed. I'm so excited. I have Senator Amidala and Chancellor Valorum. Like, come on.
I mean, that was one of the weird things about the prequel trilogy that always bugged me. It was just like, I understand they need to tell that story.
Yes.
But they focused so heavily on the politics. I'm not here to trash the prequels. I genuinely have a weird love for those movies that a lot of people don't. But I also just really love the weird stuff that goes on in the background and like all the creative alien designs. It was way too much green screen, but like some of the designs were really fun. And they did so much weird stuff with those. Speaking of Star Wars, I brought a few of my favorite weird ones with me. You can't see him very well because he's currently being held by E.T., but I've got Darth Maul, who for some reason They gave him this action feature where he splits in half, but his legs don't really move, and his arms can go up and down, but you can't do anything with his hands or elbows, so he's just permanently like this.
Yeah, he can't.
And he falls in half, and that's his whole action feature. That's all you can do with this figure, and for some reason they decided we needed to reenact that scene that badly as a toy.
It's more important that he can fall apart than actually like hold his lightsaber ready to battle.
He can't hold his lightsaber at all, I don't think. He might be able to hold it in one hand, but it's just such a weird piece that like I think I found him for $1 at a yard sale or something, so I grabbed him. And then one of my favorite Star Wars figures I own, which
I have this guy.
Yeah, I forget what he's from a box set or something. It's like I call him that's a spicy meatball Luke because his arm just does this weird motion and he's got this face like and it's like one of my favorite weird pieces. I've had him on display in my living room for years and people are always like, what the hell is that?
It's like the one moment where he's really mad at Darth Vader and he's like chopping at the hand and
he's
the
like, oh, what's the matter with you? And it made no sense. And I love that that's an action feature for some reason, and like the pose he takes, the stance this figure is permanently stuck in, the way his arm moves, and the fact that his shoulders are like this all the time. It's just there's no redeeming qualities to this figure other than how god awful it looks.
He's unplayable.
He's unplayable. There's nothing. He's not even a good display piece unless you're enjoying how goofy he looks. Like he just looks like he like pulled a muscle on his back really badly. And that's again one of the reasons that I love this figure because it's just so awful in every way, but it's hard to like not appreciate that. And while I've got him out here, I'm gonna take a minute to talk about Hungover ET, who is another one of those figures where it's like sometimes you gotta keep pumping out new versions to find ways to reuse parts.
You gotta keep the main character on the shelf.
You gotta keep the main character on the shelf. E.T., I think, is the only figure NECA ever made in that line. So, like, they just made, like, a dozen variations of E.T. Like, I understand E.T.
Elliot?
They didn't make Elliot, which is weird. Or his sister or anything like that. It's an odd choice to make just E.T. But I understand, like, maybe likeness rights could be involved.
Yeah.
Or it could be just the fact that, well, we've got the E.T. mold, so we can just keep putting hats on him.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, I understand E.T. in a dress and a wig. That makes sense as a separate figure. But the fact that they made, like, straight up hung over E.T., he came with his little, like, talkie set, and he came with, like, a mug. But he's, like, very clearly hung over E.T., and his face just looks miserable, which I don't know if you guys can actually see it, but it's, like, his face is just so down. Like, he just drank way too much last night.
His eyes are real droopy.
Like, he woke up this morning in bed with, like, Skull Attack Jack, and, like, he's just having a bad time. And that's... I love that he's just wearing this giant oversized bathrobe and he just looks naked and depressed.
So another DC toy that I often think about that is really pointless, and it's not actually an action figure, it's a vehicle or an accessory, is the Justice Jogger from Superpowers.
Yeah.
So they probably, I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt, and they probably had engineered this wind-up gimmick for something else and decided to reuse it, but like, why would you market a toy as like a way for Superman to get around on land?
Yeah.
He can fly, and he's already really fast.
Yeah.
So he's going to have, like, mechanical legs carry him around.
Absolutely. It made sense. Sometimes he's tired. He wants to sit down.
If it was for the Flash and it's somehow, like, tied into, like, his cosmic treadmill or something like that, maybe?
Well, oddly enough, I remember in the Justice League for the cartoon toy line, they absolutely made a motorcycle for the Flash. And it made no sense.
Yeah.
It's clearly, unless he's just trying to like enjoy a leisurely ride, why would the Flash need a motorcycle for anything at all? And Superman, even the animated series gave Superman a car. It's the same principle as the Walker, which the Justice Jogger is like more fun, obviously.
Right.
But like, why did they make? I mean, other than the fact that we need to sell toys, why does Superman need a car? Give Lex Luthor a car. Give Lois a car.
Yeah.
But
Superman did have a spaceship in the Superpowers line also. It was like a little shuttle. But that, at least I feel like, because he came to Earth in a shuttle and like traveling through space is kind of,
I imagine that's exhausting.
Yeah,
and like,
so
I
like,
mean,
that makes sense. It's long distance.
Yeah.
Or maybe he needs to go like warp speed or something like that, or he can't hold his breath forever in deep space. I don't know.
Yeah.
But the Jogger just always kind of struck me as like, why didn't they just put somebody else on the package?
I mean, at that point, I like to think the Justice Jogger is more for fun.
Just for fun.
Like, I think he does that just to like taunt people at this point. Like, he just like stomps on in. Like, you know, you got to imagine Metallo's robbing a bank or something, and then he just like stomps in like, he's like, oh hey, you're still here, and then just, you know, does his ice breath at him, and he's frozen, and then he just stomps away and just leaves him standing there frozen. Like, I like the idea that Superman doesn't need the Justice Jogger. He's just like jaunting about having fun with it for the sake of it, because he's, you know, I mean, what's he gonna do? Beat up every single guy every time? It's like there's only so much to be done as Superman.
If it was like a Lex Luthor trap and it was like the wrong trousers, then maybe it would work.
The wrong trousers, the wrong outside costume underwear. But yeah, that's the Justice Jogger. Man, I haven't thought about that thing in years. Speaking of things nobody ever thinks about, I've got one of my other favorite weird, don't know why they made it, kind of a shelf warmer toys. This is a Thumb from Spy Kids 2. And for those of you who haven't seen them, the Spy Kids movies are really, really fun, family-friendly movies made by Robert Rodriguez for kids to enjoy. The first two hold up pretty well, actually, but the third one onward are also not very good anymore. But the Thumbs are one of those designs that stood out to me as, why did this get made as a toy? In the movie, they kind of made sense because they're literally all thumbs. I don't know if you can see it very close up, but he's just like, his legs and his arms and his head are all just thumbs in a weird bodysuit. He is fully articulated. He doesn't do very much. He can't hold stuff because he's literally a thumb. He's all fingers. He's all thumbs, is the way to put it. And he makes no sense as a toy. He came from the Spy Kids 2 toy line. They didn't make anything for the first movie except for, I think, some McDonald's tie-ins.
Okay.
But then Spy Kids 2 came out, and the toy line hit like KB Toys and went nowhere. So at one point I owned like a dozen of these things because they were marked down to $2, and I have a weird obsession with just goofy stuff, as I mentioned before. So just the fact that they made the Thumb, which again is a character that he has no face, he has no hands, he has no feet, he has articulated knees. He can stand there and he can sit kind of neat on a shelf, but like there's not much point to him.
Yeah.
Like, it's just a character that doesn't scream, hey, let's make an action figure. Like, if I remember Spy Kids 2, they had like a literal spider monkey that was like a centaur with spider legs and a monkey top, which was really cool.
Yeah, that sounds like a
and
great
they had
toy.
a bunch of other cool creatures and animals and stuff that the kids had to fight. But they didn't make toys of any of that. They made like a couple of the kids, and they made the Thumb, and they called it a day.
Wow.
And it made no sense that he made it into the toy line, because I don't even think he was in Spy Kids 2 for more than like 2-second cameo.
Maybe it was he was in the first movie?
He was heavily, so they were like the stormtroopers of the bad guy in the first movie.
It's
and in
been
the second
so
movie,
long.
so in the second movie, like they had a thing where they did a callback where the bad guy from the first movie turned good at the end, and he came to like assist at the end of the second movie for like a 2-second cameo, which is great because Alan Cumming is the bad guy from the first movie, and he's always fantastic.
Yeah.
But like they brought these things back for, again, like maybe 2 seconds on screen.
Maybe
for whatever reason, they made it into the toy line, but the bad guys from the second movie didn't.
They must have just thought he was super memorable or something from the first one, and since they didn't do toys, they swooped in there and did him again.
Yeah. Give him a 2 thumbs up. And
so the next one I have comes kind of along the same line as your E.T. figure.
Yeah.
And I have this Spirit of Hordak. It is a translucent Masters of the Universe Classics figure, and it's the same thing. Okay, so we need to reuse some stuff, and we need to get some money out of these molds. And they legitimized him by putting him in a mini comic. There's like, the year before he comes out, there's a panel in a mini comic where Hordak shows up as a hologram or a spirit or something like that. So it's totally justified. You all want this figure. And they did it a few times in the line, but I felt like the first couple times they did it was kind of with King Grayskull, and it felt slightly more legitimate because the spirit of Castle Grayskull is like a thing that's been around in Masters of the Universe forever.
Sure.
And it's been represented as like a spooky skull in the air. And then in the 2000X cartoon where we got the King Grayskull background, it kind of made sense. And they also did a statue version of King Grayskull.
Yes.
And again, that statue was in a lot of episodes of the show. So I kind of get that one. But the chase figure of Spirit Hordak I thought was just really bottom of the barrel.
He was a reach. And I remember he was like really hard to get for a while.
Yeah, and he was one of the ones I passed on. There's very few figures that I don't own from that line. I was like skipping the hologrammy spirit figures because why?
Sure.
And then I was skipping the PowerCon stuff because it was just too hard to get.
Yeah, it was a pain.
And then I ended up finding him at a toy show one time at like a decent price. I was like, all right, well, I'll just get him and add him to the collection. But yeah.
I think the only Motu Classics figure I picked up ever was King Grayskull because he ended up in a box of stuff somebody left at my house. And they owed me money. And I didn't talk to them ever again, so that stuff became my stuff. And so if you're listening, Jeff, it's long gone. Man, that's a fun figure though. Hordak's at least fun.
Yes.
But again, like you said, trying to just shove him vaguely into the background of a mini comic for the sake of making the toy.
There's not a lot of purpose to it. It's like in Star Wars, they do a lot of the hologram figures and that, but they use the holograms in the lore frequently.
Right. Yeah, it's like a regular occurrence.
Whereas in Masters of the Universe, that's not really that common.
Yeah.
And so almost like you'd rather them, I don't know, I feel like there's somebody somewhere in that brand that would have been a better hologram
so many characters.
Or energy, powered up version.
Sure.
Something like that. Even if he was like a fade, like painted and went translucent and somehow that was in the mini comic that he powered up, that almost would seem more legitimate to me than just a spirit figure. Or
it's just sort of like, how do we get away with not using paints?
Yeah, just no paint apps. Except for the red symbol on his chest, and even that.
And he's got like an armband.
If he's a spirit, why paint that stuff?
Yeah, it's not like it's like one part's gonna spirit in darker than the rest. It's not like he's like a haunted chest piece that's got a spirit in it. That if the chest piece was really there,
right? If the armor was floating, if it was undead like possessing the armor, like that
would at least be something that made sense. But it's as is. For my next thing that I brought, and this is all sort of lumped into one thing, is the vinyl boom of the last decade or so has brought us a lot of really weird, kind of pointless stuff. And that, you can go into pop culture with it. You can have fun. Like I forget what this line is even called. It's from USAopoly, so it's not very big, long running line. They made a line of Star Trek food themed vinyl figures. This one I bought on clearance because I love puns and again weird stuff. So this is a Gorn Muffin, and I couldn't leave that on the shelf based on the box title alone. I really love Gorn. I like lizard people stuff. I'm a sucker for that. I'll buy it every time if it's Bosk or Gorn or whatever. I didn't even care about Star Trek when I bought this. I like it, but it's like never really been my wheelhouse. Then I've got from X-Files, naked greased up tombs. The fact that they made a toy of this blows my mind. It's funny because I didn't know they made this one until after I bought regular Tombs.
Okay.
And I was like, oh, Tombs, that's from that really memorable episode of X-Files. This is fun. I'll buy that and put them on the shelf. And then the next day I went to the same convention at the same booth. They had unboxed more of these.
Okay.
And sure enough, I found naked, greased up Tombs covered in butter. And I couldn't leave them behind because the fact that they made that just... And then to Funko stuff again. I know we've talked about Funko before, but they've recently delved into running out of ideas. And instead
that's not possible.
I didn't think it was, and I'm a huge advocate for Funko brands, but they've recently stopped just doing pop culture and just started randomly slapping limbs and faces on stuff. So what I brought with me is the only one that I've been suckered into buying is a White Castle slider. I just really love White Castle, so I wasn't going to not pick it up. But, like, they've been doing this with, like, Kraft mac and cheese and can of Coca-Cola. And it's just, at what point is it just, like, what are you doing?
Yeah, why?
Like, I know they've been doing it with a lot of the classic retro toys lately.
Yeah.
Like, it's one thing to do, like, say, My Pet Monster. But, like, I can understand doing a vintage toy that's like, oh, it's My Pet Monster. It looks like the toy from the 80s. Great. Right. But then they're doing vintage toys now where it's like, they did a Ouija one where it's just a planchette with face and eyes and limbs, and it's holding the Ouija board, but it's the planchette, so it's not to scale. It's weird. Or they did a barrel of monkeys that's just the barrel with arms and a face on it. And it's just like...
Yeah.
Like, I very rarely I talk a lot. I'm very rarely at a loss for words, but every time I see these things and the new versions of that are dropping, like, I understand doing pops for every which thing that comes out. New movies, TV shows, musicians,
right?
Like, sports players. Like, I understand why those exist. I don't understand why they're just slapping limbs and faces on stuff and making anthropomorphic versions of household items. So that's got to be like top of my list for why does this exist as a toy?
Yeah.
Except I had to buy the White Castle slider. I'm weak. I couldn't help myself. I will buy anything they slap a White Castle logo on. That is an open offer to White Castle to send me stuff.
So my last item that I brought often comes up in sort of a collection of like pointless toys, and we've touched on it already with like the Star Wars politicians.
Absolutely.
This is one of the last 17 final Kenner Star Wars figures, the Imperial Dignitary.
Yes.
He's just kind of seen in the background.
Yeah.
Has no lines.
No lines.
He has no feature. But I love this toy.
Mm-hmm.
And it's solely because as a kid, one, we knew he was hard to find.
Mm-hmm.
And when my buddy got him from a comic book store, we knew that he was hard to find and we needed to like make him important.
Yeah.
And so we would kind of follow canon to a certain point from the Star Wars movies and then veer off and come up with some new things.
Sure, as you do.
So the Purple Pope was the Emperor's boss and was the most powerful Sith Lord.
Emperor's boss.
The Emperor's boss, the Purple Pope.
Yeah.
And he was just the most outrageous villain and completely unstoppable. And we played with this figure nonstop. So all the people that complain about after Return of the Jedi, when everyone just came with stick weapons or no weapons, they're no fun to play with. I think you just didn't have enough imagination.
Absolutely. I mean, the Purple Pope.
The Purple Pope.
Popel.
I mean, just this guy is going to wreck you with either his lightning powers or this amazing kick.
I like how thick his leg is. I like to think that it's not that it's the robe, that is his leg.
That is his leg.
His leg is just like chunky, like a Kit Kat bar. And I just, I always looked at that guy and thought, isn't that the guy from The Wizard of Oz? Like, who just yells at you through the door. And I never knew any backstory on that guy other than he just sort of stood there by the Emperor that time.
He's just there.
And I like, now that you've given me this glorious backstory of the Purple Pope, that he's the Emperor's boss.
Right.
Like, I like to think that he's Palpatine's district manager.
Palpatine was getting his annual review during Return of the Jedi.
So you got to really get this Death Star together. He's like, you got to finish this thing up. You already messed up the first one. This one's really got to double time it.
Chop, chop.
Chop, chop. And then he just floats away. I like to think that he didn't need a ship either. He just sort of floats through space.
Well, yeah, that's where Leia got the idea from.
Popemobile.
So those are our list of pointless toys.
Yep.
It's definitely not all-inclusive, so if you have a great pointless toy, whether you love it or hate it, let us know in the comments down below. Thanks for hanging on the pegs with us here.
Always welcome.
Thanks for coming on, Jordan.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to plug before we wrap it up?
Honestly, I can't think of anything besides, check out Geek Anything. We're literally pumping out new content every day. We've got lots of cool stuff coming up in the near future, so definitely stick around.
All right, and check back for the next episode of Pegwarmers.
Thanks, guys.